Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zolotech, and the iPhone Air has been my main phone for the past week. When I finished my iPhone 17 Pro Max review, I then swapped over all of my data as well as the eSIM, and I've been using this full-time since. So I've had a week to use it and wanted to share my review, going over everything from battery life, cameras, and more. Now the design, when looking at it from the front, feels like the future, but since we're not in the future, there's actually some pretty strong compromises. So from the front, it feels super thin, it looks futuristic, it's almost all screen other than the dynamic island, and there's very small bezels around the edge, and it just feels super premium. So we have a titanium frame, so this is the one titanium phone this year, so titanium, the power sleep wake button, and all the buttons are the same, but they feel very high quality to press, so that's super nice to have. And then just going around, of course, we have camera control, and again, it has a nice clicky sound. It feels very high quality. And then the bottom here, everything just looks machined and seems super premium and high quality with this phone. We do have a slightly offset USB-C port, but that's sort of to accommodate the display and everything else inside. And then on the left-hand side, of course, our volume buttons and our action button. But again, everything is super clicky, has very nice feedback, and just is very high quality overall. So that's one of the great things with this phone. Of course, Face ID and everything else just feels very futuristic holding on to this. It feels very comfortable. The radius of the corners is nice, just like any iPhone. But that's where the one thing that I really like ends, and then sort of on the back doesn't really fit with Apple's design. In the past, typically the radius of things such as the camera plateau match that of the outside of the edge of the corner radius of the actual phone. So you can see that here with the iPhone 17 Pro Max, everything sort of matches. And if we go back to even maybe the iPhone XS, you'll see here, again, the camera sort of matches everything. It just feels like it's in place properly. It feels very premium, like the iPhone XS with the iPhone Air, but some of the design is a little bit odd. I wonder if they took this camera plateau directly from the control center, just took this here and then pasted it on the back and said, yeah, that will work, and goes with the new design language of iOS 26. But it looks a little bit out of place, but just holding it like this when you're using it feels super futuristic and very premium and nice. And those worried about durability, I don't think you're going to have to worry about that because this seems to be very durable. Apple says it's their most durable iPhone yet, and different tests have shown that. From bend tests taking over 200 pounds to break this, and the glass itself is using ceramic shield too. And I've had some experience with this if you saw my 17 Pro Max review. For example, I dropped it off a tripod onto the ground, and it actually has a chip in it. Now it didn't crack, it dropped about 4 feet directly onto the face of the phone, onto a rock. And it actually put a chip in the display. So instead of cracking it, it has this little chip here. If I put a screen protector on it, I was just filming the review, so unfortunately it didn't have any protection there. Again, it fell off of a tripod. I don't typically drop my phone, so this one I've used the same way. Thankfully, it didn't fall off a tripod, but overall seems very durable. The screen is probably going to be scratch-free for the most part, as the previous ceramic shield on the iPhone 16 Pro Max seems to be very durable and is held up generally pretty well. It does have a few scratches overall, but in general, it's very, very durable, and I would expect this to be even more so. Now, I will say, if you're going to use a case with the iPhone Air, the only thing I would recommend is the bumper, because you lose the feel of the overall premium or sort of futuristic feel by putting anything else on it. Using the bumper here, or this little bumper case, you still get to feel the phone, and it gives you this feeling of, wow, this phone is thin because it's thinner than the bumper itself. So you can see it's super thin and the bumper feels thin, but then inside that is the phone. So it gives this sort of premium feel to it, where a case on it just makes it a little bit thicker, and then you may have wanted to opt for something a little bit more powerful, or maybe a little bit more premium with the battery size and everything else with the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Now, there is a premium feel to this phone, but there's some compromises as well to get to this thinness. So one of those is battery life. So let me take this bumper case off, and it feels like you're going to break the phone when you do this, so you have to be really careful, but the phone seems to handle it no problem. But the titanium is nice, but we already know that titanium and Apple don't get along well where they try to dissipate heat. So they have some issues here, and it does get a little bit warm, but first let's talk about battery. Since I've been using this full time, I went from iOS 26, then Apple released iOS 26.0.1, I installed that, and I've been using it full time, just like anyone would regularly use the phone throughout the updates. So if we go to General and Software Update, you'll see I'm on 26.0.1, and if we go to the battery, under Battery Health, you'll see I currently have 11 cycles. Now, as I said, I've used it for about a week. I did charge it actually when I unboxed it and everything else, so we should really be at about 7 or 8 cycles, but this shows you that I have to charge it quite a bit. And the reason for that is it doesn't get me through the day. So you'll see here it says your phone or your iPhone is used more than usual since upgrading iOS, which may affect battery life. And that's typical after installing an update. But if we take a look at the battery usage itself, yesterday I used 123% of my battery and had 4 hours and 35 minutes of screen active time. That means that I went through the entire battery before the end of the night and ended up charging it. At 7 p.m. today, I took this off the charger at about 9:30 or 10 a.m. today, and it was at 20% at 7 p.m. Just using it regularly, not doing any gaming, recording a couple small videos with it, and you can see what used it here. I had 4 hours and 35 minutes. So the weather used a little bit of background, X, mail, Instagram, music, and you can see everything that used it, from YouTube to TikTok to the camera, and the camera was fairly efficient. So just using a few different regular apps, nothing really dramatic, no games, it didn't get me through the day. And I found that to be true from the previous update as well. So you'll see 4 hours and 27 minutes. I would expect between 4 and 6 hours of screen on time, depending on your usage. So I find that one thing you must have if you're going to be traveling with this is the MagSafe battery pack. Now, one thing you'll notice when you're using this is it definitely charges slower than others. So this works great. I wish you could charge it wirelessly, but it works great. And you can plug it in and charge your phone, but it then makes it thicker than the iPhone 17 Pro Max. So that's one downside of this. I really like the phone, but then you have to charge it quite a bit because it just won't get me through the day. I find that it feels like early betas of iOS 26 on the 16 Pro Max, where I was getting about 4.5 hours of screen on time. And Apple has added an adaptive battery mode on this to help with this, but that's actually been turned on. So if we go back here, you'll go down to power mode. I've never turned off adaptive power mode while using this. So adaptive power adjusts it, helps me sort of get through the day. And typically I'm on Wi-Fi, so I'm even using less power than most people would out on the go or anything else. I used it with CarPlay a little bit, wireless, but again, it's just not very good on battery for me. The 17 Pro Max easily got me through the day. So there's definitely a big difference here, and I really want to love this phone as far as that goes, but the battery is just lacking at this point. That brings me on to the speaker. Now, I thought there'd be some concern because the speaker itself, there's only one of them, and it's in the top right above the dynamic island. So right here in this little slit right at the top, you can see it. That's all that we've got, and it is plenty loud. So if you're listening to music or watching a video and you have it in portrait mode, you won't notice a difference. I was surprised and forgot it was lacking one speaker down at the bottom. However, if you hold in landscape, you'll notice the difference right away. So if you're watching a video in landscape, you'll only hear it out of here, and your thumb could block the speaker as well. So you have to sort of hold it this way, or at least use AirPods with it, which is what I found I was doing most of the time. So you don't have a microphone, or a speaker rather, on the bottom, just the microphone, and you have the speaker on the top. And unfortunately, it's okay. It's just not great if you're going to use your speakers all the time. Also, if you use a phone with a fast charger, you'll definitely notice a slowness when you're charging with maybe MagSafe or something else. So if you're just charging it wired or with MagSafe, you definitely notice a difference between this and the 17 Pro Max, where it can just charge a lot faster. Now, when it comes to the display is quite good. Overall, it's nice and bright. It goes up to 3000 nits. I have no issue seeing it outside, and it stays nice and bright. It also has an anti-reflective coating this year, which I find to be very helpful. So you can see the reflection here, but if I compare it to the 16 Pro Max, we'll just bring it in here, turn off the display, you can see it's definitely less reflective. It's not by a huge margin, but you can tell the difference here. We also have a 120 Hz ProMotion display. Apple did not compromise any phones this year, including the iPhone 17 base model up to the Pro Max. They're all the same exact display. 3000 nits, 120 Hz ProMotion, and they have a new PWM setting as well. But you can actually limit the smooth ProMotion if you want to. Under motion, under accessibility. So if we go to accessibility, go to motion, scroll down, you'll see it says limit frame rate. Sets the maximum frame rate of the display to 60 frames per second. That lets you know that you can slow it down if you needed to. And that's something that, again, is on all phones this year. So again, no compromises here. It's also always on, so if we go to display and brightness, you'll see we have an always on display. If you want it, turn it on, leave the wallpaper, blur the wallpaper. You have all the same options as the Pro models. In addition to this, we also have a new setting for PWM. Now, this is something I've talked about at length over the years. If we go under display and text size, under accessibility, scroll to the bottom, you'll see display pulse smoothing. The way these displays are controlled on just about any OLED display, whether it's iPhone or Samsung phones or anything else, is they're flickering the display faster or slower, and your eyes perceive that as brighter or more dim. So as we go brighter, it's flickering faster. As we go more dim, it's flickering slower. And that can really cause eye strain, can cause headaches, as well as feeling nauseated. And this affects me personally and affects about 1 in 10 people. If you turn this on, it says it disables pulse width modulation to provide a different way to dim the OLED display, which can create a smoother display output at low brightness levels. Disabling PWM may affect low brightness display performance under certain conditions. I've found this definitely helps. If you're super sensitive to PWM, this should really help. Usually about above 39 to 40% brightness, it's really not an issue on iPhones. However, below that can definitely cause eye strain. So overall, it's definitely great to see them finally fix this issue, listen to our concerns. I've had this concern since the iPhone 10, and now they've finally addressed it. So hopefully that helps you out, since there's no longer an LCD option that doesn't have PWM, but you have this option. So with that option enabled and the always on display off, that's the battery life I was experiencing. Now, one concern I had was the overall display sort of being too dim if the phone got hot. The phone definitely heats up, and you can feel it as most of the CPU and everything else are right here at the top, but it doesn't really feel slow. I did get an occasional slowdown from time to time, and that's usually due to the adaptive battery mode, trying to save some power, but overall, it feels just as fast as the iPhone 17 Pro models do, unless maybe you're undergoing heavy usage or it's trying to get rid of some of that heat, which it doesn't do as well as the 17 Pro Max. So doing everyday tasks, which is what I would think most people do with this phone, probably less power users, and just someone that wants a really nice phone to hold on to and use regularly, I don't think this will be an issue, but the overall speed, just doing regular things, whether that's TikTok, Facebook, or Instagram, or just going on websites, I think you'll find this to be fine. If you're going to game, I would opt for the Pro phones, as that has a vapor chamber that helps dissipate that heat. But for day-to-day use, it does get a little bit warm, you feel it, but it's not as hot as the 16 Pro Max generally, unless you put your finger right here by the camera plateau. Now, speaking of the camera plateau, I left all the fingerprints on here so you could see it definitely collects them. We have one 48 megapixel camera, and this is great for most people. If you don't care about an ultra wide or telephoto zoom camera, it's great to have the regular wide 48 megapixel camera where you can sort of zoom in 2 times or up to about 6 times. So I have a couple samples that I use this camera with, and I wanted to share that with you. Now, the great thing this year is the front-facing camera is great on all of the iPhones, whether it's the iPhone Air, iPhone 17, 17 Pro, or 17 Pro Max. We get the exact same 18 megapixel camera, so no compromises there. So if you pick an iPhone Air, you're going to have the same camera. And you can also go into landscape while holding it in portrait. So in the same location, you'll see I'm now in landscape, and it's great that we have this option. I haven't had to rotate the phone or anything like that, and I can just continue using it. We also have a dual capture mode, so I can talk to you while we're recording what's behind me. So as I'm just walking through this trail here near this little pond or lake, you can see that I'm talking to you right here, but also recording what's behind me. So this is a great feature that we have. I think the only thing that I would like to see changed is if maybe this created 2 video files so we could split them up afterwards when editing, or be able to sort of change this where it is on the display and get rid of it from time to time. But right now there's no option for that, but this could be updated in the future with software. The camera is pretty great overall, 48 megapixels, 4K, 60 frames per second, and we can zoom in as well up to about 6 times. It's smooth to zoom in all the way because you're not switching between lenses. So we can zoom out, that's 2x, back to 1x, and that's what we've got. So if you don't care about the telephoto zoom and ultra wide, this camera is great for that. Now I have action mode enabled, and this should take out many of the jitters as I'm walking along and really help with ultra stabilized video. So this is something, again, that we get this year thanks to that wide front-facing camera. So you can see how much the rear camera is moving, but it looks super stable because it's only on the front camera. So maybe next year we'll have square sensors on the back of the phone, and that's something I'd love to see. So if you're someone that uses the front-facing camera for most of your work, there's no compromises here. It's just the rear-facing camera, and the front-facing camera, you get all the same benefits. With that open gate shooting, you can go to landscape mode, you've got dual capture, and you have that ultra stabilization. So all of those things are here. It's great to have those. And the things we don't have are Pro RAW for recording video, and the same thing is true when it comes to photos as well. So if we go into our photo settings, just make sure that those are things you don't care about, because if you go into here, you'll see under record video, we have up to 4K 60, not 4K 120, and then our typical video modes. Also, if we go down here into our camera, we have our different options here, of course, for our lenses, not all of them, and then you have your normal settings. This is basically like a standard iPhone 17. We don't have the additional options such as what we would get with the Pro models. So if we go over to photo here, then we go into, let's spin this around, go into our modes. You'll see styles and flash and live and timer and aspect ratio, but you're not going to get all of those Pro modes. If we go into here, you don't really just have any of those here. So you can use third-party apps, but you don't get RAW and all of those other things. One other thing I wanted to mention is because we don't have an ultra-wide lens, we don't have things such as macro photography, spatial photos and videos, and basically what you would expect from the base iPhone 17 these days. So because of that extra lens, you're going to get those additional features. But again, if those don't matter to you, well, then I wouldn't pay attention to it, and you could still pick the iPhone Air and have something that feels a little bit different. I also want to mention cellular connectivity. As you saw through most of the video, I had 1 bar, now I have 3 bars. I find it to be very hit or miss with this particular phone. I don't know if that's because it's a traditional antenna design. It's not the new antenna design of the iPhone 17 Pro, where they sort of integrated it into the camera plateau and around it. But with this phone, I find that I don't get as good of a signal as I do with the iPhone 17 Pro models this year. I don't know that the overall speed is really that different, but the overall connectivity is definitely different and more reminiscent of that of the iPhone 16 Pro Max for me. So just one thing I wanted to mention there, with things such as Wi-Fi with their new N1 modem, I really haven't noticed an issue here. So if we connect here, go to speed tests, I have Wi-Fi 7, so we'll see what we get, but overall speeds seem to be reasonable, but I do have some odd disconnect issues from time to time. It's very much more like the iPhone 16 Pro Max experience, but you'll see I have over 1,000 down, and I should have up to 40 megabits per second up. So you'll see that we're hitting just about 40 megabits per second, and that's the speed that I have, but with the iPhone 17 Pro Max, I hit somewhere around 1,100 down, but again, that can be many different factors. But it's just one thing I wanted to share, as I noticed some differences here between this and the Pro phones. So with the processor, we have the A19 Pro processor. You can see that here if we go into benchmarks with Geekbench. So we'll let it load here. You'll see we have 12 gigs of RAM. We also have the same CPU that we have in the iPhone 17 Pro Max. We just don't have the heat dissipation that that one has. So we have all of the speed, all of the support for future support. So probably 5 to 7 years of updates. We've got all of the same buttons, all of the same Apple Intelligence features, the updated Siri, and everything else. Of course, when they update that even further next year, we should have all of those features as well if they're supported in your country. However, if you're wondering who this is for, well, I think this is for someone that wants something that feels a little bit different, maybe a little bit more premium, but they don't need all the Pro features, and they were getting through the day just fine on the iPhone 16, iPhone 15, or iPhone XR or XS. If you moved over to this phone, you're going to get similar battery life throughout the day typically, and just usability will be that much better because it's faster and has all of the latest features. But if you're a heavy camera user, especially the rear cameras, that's where you're going to consider the other models. I would probably recommend most people go for the base iPhone 17, as that's a great option, or the iPhone 17 Pro or Pro Max are obviously nice options, but if you want something that just is a little bit different, this is a great phone. I know some people just don't like it or don't get it, but you really have to get it in your hands to understand that it feels different, premium, and more like the future. And I think this is halfway to the future. This is probably half of a folding iPhone. That's what I would guess Apple's planning. So maybe something with the iPhone 17 Pro or the iPhone Air, 2 of them together would give you an iPhone Fold. So we don't really know 100%, but this is getting us to the future technology, just like the iPhone XS and iPhone X did. I think we're seeing the same thing here. But I think it's a great phone, but it's just not for everyone due to the battery. If you don't mind carrying around this extra battery, then you'll love it, as it will get you extra battery throughout the day, more so than a 17 Pro Max. But you need this extra battery in order to get that. So overall, great phone, definitely something that is, again, halfway to an iPhone Fold or something along those lines. I really love this phone, and I'm very much torn between choosing the iPhone Air and the 17 Pro Max this year as my main phone. But let me know what you've chosen in the comments below if you're planning to get an iPhone Air, what you think of the iPhone Air, and if you've had your hands on one of these or tried one out. If you haven't, I would highly recommend you try it before you maybe say it's not for me, because it's definitely something you don't appreciate until you hold. But let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do, and if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.